Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Next Generation Fan Engagement Panel Discussion. I'm Amr Rawi, Director of Marketing Strategy for Oracle Customer Experience, joining you from my home office in London, and I will be the moderator of today's panel discussion, which will last for about 40 minutes. This session, as you probably have noticed with the ping, is being recorded and will be available for on-demand version later on. The sports industry has been undergoing some important changes. And whilst the long-term impact of the current crisis on the sports industry is still unknown, which will probably change how fans experience consuming sports events and how they are consuming content in the future. Today, we would like to discuss how data and technology are helping to shape the next generation of fan experience, the challenges the sports industry is facing, and the way to overcome them. We will highlight and look at best practices and innovative ideas that is shaping the next generation of fan engagement. We will also look at opportunities that can be developed with the use of data and technology to improve existing revenue streams and create new ones. To help sports brands deliver an unrivaled fan experience, drive commercial value, and become an agile organization that is more resilient and adaptable to the changing environment. I'm very pleased and honored that I have an amazing panel of sports leaders. And if you may all start putting your camera on and microphones, they are coming from different areas of the industry, including representations from international federation, regional federation, right holders, leagues, and competition. With this, I'd like to ask the panel to introduce themselves and their organization. And after that, we'll go straight into our panel discussion. We'll start with you, Kelly, please, and then Vincent, and then JJ and Nick.
I am Kelly Britton. I'm the Director of Brand and Comms at Red Bull Racing and Red Bull Technology. Been in the business for a whole 8 weeks now, having recently joined from DAZN, which is a global sports streaming service. So under my remit at Red Bull Racing, we've got all of our managed, earned and owned platforms. So all of our comms activity, our social, our digital content, and obviously our fan engagement program, which is a huge focus for us at the moment.
Fantastic. Thank you for joining us, Kelly. Vincent?
Thanks, Amr, and great to be here. Good afternoon to you all. So my name is Vincent Gaillard. I'm the CEO of EPCR, which stands for European Professional Club Rugby. We're the rights holders of the Challenge Cup and of the Heineken Champions Cup, often referred to as the Champions League of rugby. So while we are in a different league to football in terms of revenues and, I guess, geographical reach, we do bring together the best professional clubs of Europe. We're based in Lausanne. We have 9 stakeholders, and those are the 6 rugby unions and the 3 professional leagues of Europe. And I suppose that just like my colleagues here, we are faced with, well, a number of challenges, including figuring out the ongoing shift in the way sports being consumed, or understanding what role sport has in the life of Generation Z individuals, predicting how all that will affect the sport business model and the value chain, understanding how to properly capture and leverage the massive amount of data that's out there. So here you go. With all that in mind, looking forward to a good discussion today.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Vincent. JJ?
So my name is JJ Rowland. I'm Director of Business Development and Marketing here at the European Handball Federation. I've been here in Vienna since 2009. I now head up a new department responsible for a lot of different aspects, but mainly the growth of the sports and the growth of the numbers behind the sport, whether that's TV audience or number of spectators, ticket sales, people playing, and obviously revenue as well. And my department is in charge of a lot of different aspects from digital marketing, CRM, media sales, marketing implementation, ticketing, merchandising. We're also responsible for the development of the Federation's new strategic plan, the European Handball Master Plan. The European Handball Federation is, as I said, based in Vienna. We have about 75 people working here in the office. A normal federation work, we're in charge of organizing Champions League and the club competitions, but also our EHF Euro competitions, as well as transfers and development work, etc. Interesting, perhaps for this discussion, is that from July 2020, we signed a new media and marketing agreement with Infront and the Zone Group, which brought a lot of new investments to the European Handball Federation and led to the start of a digital transformation within the Federation in terms of we have a new website, new OTT channel, new app is in development, but we also then signed a deal with our colleagues from Oracle for the development of a CRM system, and that's a major project that we're also working on within our department at the moment.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, JJ. Nick, last but not the least, and we're saving the last for the best.
Sorry, just on mute there. Very kind. Thank you. Yeah, pleasure to be here. My name is Nick Hyatt. I'm the Digital Partnerships Manager at the Volleyball World, which is, well, I guess you could say it's the right arm of the FIVB, which is the Volleyball Federation. So I guess an interesting perspective for me at the moment in terms of the growth and development of what we're experiencing. It's a recent creation of the company, Volleyball World. Formerly, I was with FIVB for close to 8 years in the technology and innovation role and transitioned into Volleyball World. So the main differentiating factors here, I suppose, is the FIVB is an international federation. It governs the sport of volleyball and beach volleyball, and for those that are aware, snow volleyball as well. And Volleyball World is very much part of that journey, but looking very much so at the strategic commercial aspects, and digital being one of the key drivers here. So some of the areas that I'm primarily focusing on are the products, all digital products, fan-facing in particular, now more so on the front end. Fan data is a huge part of that, and also sponsorship activations and understanding how we can bring some value to our partners throughout the process. So yeah, lovely to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you very much all for being part of this panel. I mean, just about talking about your introductions and the thing that you do is kind of a very good segue into my first question to you all. And again, I know, JJ, you talked about the deal with the zone. Nick, you talked about the importance of data. But what are the key changes and evolution in fan behaviors, and how are they consuming and how they are consuming sports today? And what are the key trends that you seeing that shaping that fan experience?
But I think from my perspective in my current role and also at DAZN, I think the advent of 5G technology is going to be pretty seismic in the way that people are allowed to consume sport and not be tied to the living room. That the ability to watch, Bridgerton and without buffering is kind of one thing, but actually if you're following your favorite team and you've got somebody lined up behind the ball in front of the net and then you get buffering, then that's a completely different ball, so to speak. So I think that is a huge enabler in terms of sport consumption. I think that the increased growth of or use of companion apps and second screens and that availability of data to augment the consumption sort of process and enable people to feel much more engaged and involved in their sport, in their team, in the race, whatever that looks like. It enables that sort of proximity to it. And I think, that the increasing growth of sort of social platforms dedicated to sport as an accompaniment. I mean, sport has always been a massively social entity, but and it's always brought sort of friends and family and wider communities together, but social has just completely supercharged that and sort of, industrialized it. And I think that, that's as an important part of that sports consumption as actually the actual sport itself is just that kind of community wrapper that's enabled. So I think they're some of the kind of standout areas for me.
Yeah, I think from the volleyball perspective, what we've noticed as well is user behavior is really what we're trying to focus on during this crazy situation that we all find ourselves in, and hopefully coming out of very, very soon. But I remember looking back at some data, and there was users who were starting to consume short form videos, and we weren't sure if that was going to be persistent. And so we started looking at, how can we be relevant and creating content in particular that will enable us to connect with fans. And it shows that, people are actually engaging with short form data, videos up to 5 minutes long. So making that adaptive behavior and providing, what the audience actually requests and needs is an interesting area for us to go deeper into. And I think from that, what we've noticed is subscription models are also something that people are more accepting of. In 2018, prior to that, looking at OTT models and platforms, it was something that was a bit of a concern and an unknown area as a topic for us to maybe delve into deeper later on the conversation. But I'm sure we're all exposed to the likes of Netflix, Disney Plus, Sky Sports, DAZN. There's so many out there now, it's almost endless. And so trying to make yourself relevant and create that platform for people to engage with you directly, especially if you have the rights of the sports yourself, I think is a really interesting topic and something that we're very much looking to keep building on. So that's something that I find fascinating. It's the user behavior for sure.
Maybe I can talk about what we've been doing at the European Handball Federation, especially since our new deal with Infront and DAZN, and we have now a digital marketing team from DAZN based in their hub in Madrid. And we have focused quite a lot on engaging the new breed of fan and younger audiences. And we've invested in WSC, which is an artificial intelligence video editing tool. It's an Israeli company. And we now produce all of our short form highlights, short clips for our social media channels with WSC, which especially during the COVID time and lockdown and everyone being at home, has really enabled us to produce a huge amount more content than we could have done before using human editors. And that means we're looking then not just to push out on EHF channels, so on our own social media channels, but also looking at clubs, federations, and external organizations where we can push the content out to. And with using a tool like WSC and another one called Socially, we're able to provide all of this content to users outside of our normal bubble so that we can reach a lot more people, which is at the end of the day, our strategic aim. Handball, we have a great product. We just feel that we need to reach more people with our content.
I have to say you are mute. It must be. It's a key word for 2020, right?
Thanks. Yeah. For us, taking the lens of the rights holder, well, obviously we're seeing, like most of you, I'm sure, a large number of pretty fundamental evolutions, right, and shifts that are all colliding at the moment. Some of those have been mentioned. That stating the obvious, the fragmentation of the very traditional media offer, the new ways of consuming media. We talked about shorter formats. We talked about non-live. We talked about events that are more interactive, more participative, usage of second or third screen. Obviously, a much bigger, greater competition for fans' attention, for brain space, and with an attention span that's becoming much more limited, at least with the young generations, which has an impact on live audiences. At the same time, a desire for more authenticity, for a sport that is probably less organized, a desire for a sport that's a bit more organic, possibly a bit more outdoors oriented, and also a sport that's more responsible, which is another matter in itself, which has nothing to do with technology, but it's out there, right? So we have changes that are very fundamental, that are revolutionizing the traditional sports / media business model as we know it. Has a massive impact on revenues already, and more is expected. So it's impacting rights holders, it's impact all the way down to athletes' revenues, to the core, right? So, and that's before we talk about COVID, obviously. So Yeah, a lot of trends and shifts that are colliding where yeah, agility and adaptation is going to be required for all the rights holders who are relying on a traditional business model. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the things as well that we start seeing is, and again, I think it's all what you have mentioned, is kind of all aiming to bringing, I think, to the point that Kelly you made earlier, is how could we bring those fans closer to the game? And one of the things that we, of course, we see with the second and third screen is kind of giving them more data about the performance of a player, of a car, of an athlete, so they can feel more immersed into that kind of into that event, into that performance, which is leading me into kind of my next question. We talked about kind of what the expectation of the fans, and equally as well, you give some great example of what you are planning to do. Can you talk a little bit more about the key challenges that you are today facing to deliver some of those great fan experiences, and how are you planning to overcome them?
I think in general, what we all face is that challenge around proximity. There is obviously a finite number of fans that can attend any game, race, match, etc. And right now that's zero. So nobody is able to attend anything. So that need to bring fans closer is a massive challenge for us. And that's, I suppose it's compounded for us in that we aren't the rights holder. So the window to F1 is obviously held by F1. They are the organisation that supplies that access. So we need to make sure that the offer that we're building in around that is sort of hugely engaging and augments that kind of key offering, and is almost, you know, as engaging, if not more so, than the actual race itself. And I think one of the other challenges, again, I fully suspect that we all face, is that fans' expectations around the kind of content that they want to consume has totally changed. That's been changed by a number of factors, one of which is the growth in series such as, you know, All or Nothing, Drive to Survive, etc. It's really altered how fans engage and their expectations of the kind of material that they're going to be presented with. And you know, that presents a huge opportunity in many respects. It's you know, democratized and popularized F1. The challenge for us is how do we kind of capitalize on that growth and also provide the next stage on from that content in a very Red Bull-esque way. So they're the sort of challenges that we're looking at the moment.
Maybe I can jump in there because and mention COVID again. It was mentioned briefly, but obviously that's had cast a huge shadow over all our sports over the last year or so. And from a handball or an EHF perspective, that's probably been our biggest challenge over the last 12 months. And we've managed to deliver on content. So we've managed to continue playing, and I think that's been the biggest challenge for us, but also crucially important for the market, because with handball, its profile is very popular in certain markets, but it needs to continue to have that profile continually. And we had, for example, our European Championship in December without spectators, and in extremely difficult circumstances in a bubble. We were supposed to play in Denmark and Norway, and eventually the last minute had to switch to one country. But it was crucially important for us that we delivered the sport for obviously for our media and marketing contracts, but also that we had a profile for the sport. And one of the challenges we've had is then to, obviously people are sitting at home, they want to have information, they want to have the content delivered to them, is we always think of digital transformation as a marathon, not a sprint. But because of COVID, we've really had to deliver quickly to be able to deliver the tools that we can then bring to the fans at home. A good example is our app, which we're currently working on, and which will be launched ahead of the new season. If we were to go back, then before COVID, we would already have our app in place. So it's obviously, it takes, with so many different projects on the go at the same time, it's a huge challenge to be able to deliver these projects in a short space of time.
Of course, I mean, COVID, as it has been a test for humankind, it has been as well a test for all of us as businesses and sports specifically, in terms of how much investment we have made to be able to kind of connect with those fans, as Kelly mentioned, kind of not only through the venue or kind of through kind of the direct relationship, but virtually. I'm interested as well to hear from Nick and Vincent if there is something, some of those challenges that you guys are facing, and ways of overcoming some of those as well.
Yeah, I think from the volleyball world perspective, I suppose it's very similar to that of what JJ was explaining there. The reality for the people who are listening is we almost went a full season without events, and similar to Vincent, and it's we're the rights holders of the product itself. So there's one way of keeping the business going and selling the rights, but the fans' expectations does come down to that key word right now, which is content. And content is essentially becoming king here. So what we had to try and understand was, how do we pacify whilst also trying to grow our audience and keeping them engaged, and trying to then look at the objectives that have been set in for the subsequent year of 2020 and moving forward, and try and move the goalposts. And so we had to find new ways, and we also leverage a tool. So they're getting a bit of a plug today, WSC, which, as JJ has highlighted, is a very powerful video clipping tool using artificial intelligence. And essentially, one of the strategies we came up with for content was an always-on content strategy, and this was separated, agnostic completely from the events. It was really trying to leverage content that we had in the past and bring it back to life in some way, shape, or form, to restructure it. And we found that was really, really useful and helped us get through. Of course, content isn't the only business driving pillar here, but it is definitely a key one for us. So I think for us, it was leaning on a strong technical infrastructure that we've had in place. Again, to JJ's point, we've had in the pipeline certain developments with the products that we want to see come to fruition a year ago or so. But we had a website in place, we have an OTT in place, CRM with a powered by Oracle in place. So it was really trying to put your heads together and understand what can we leverage here, at also within the costs and the framework that we can achieve, because everything comes at a price, right? So it's just trying to make sure that we're clear with where we're going with this. So for us, it's trying to identify the moving goalposts consistently, and relying on what we have internally to build that scope for the fan moving forward.
For us, trying to take things on a macro level for us, I think there are three main challenges. One, and it's important, is the access to the expertise, right? Not every rights holder has the means or the ability to have the right technology or data expertise in-house, right? So access to the expertise is one issue, which requires more agility and a different business model. We have a challenge linked to the access funding to buy that expertise, right? So, which then requires willingness to change the business model, to allow investors in-house, which sometimes can be seen as too great a compromise towards the future of sport. So access to expertise is a challenge, access to funding is a challenge, and dare I say, the politics, unfortunately, in sport often gets in the way of doing the right things, right? And in the way of acting as a normal business would, right? So if you combine all these three, sometimes just getting to what appear to be very simple solutions or no-brainers can be challenging in our environment. So it's a difficult equation, and I have to say we are still working on it. As usual, I think quality win-win partnerships is part of the solution. The question is how and with who. Personally, I favor partnerships between rights holders and specialized agencies. I think the EHF model that I just heard about, but I've been studying, is one of those models that personally I favor. In other words, an agency that brings you the expertise that I was mentioning, the human resources, the investments that you need, while allowing the rights holder to do its job, to develop the sport, and not giving away all the family jewels. So it's a pretty tricky equation. And again, the question is, with which agency, what control of your commercial rights do you accept to give? with revenue, with what revenue share, and how do you get to market? So difficult, but there are solutions out there for sure.
Of course, I mean, again, we have seen one of the biggest forms of political battles in the European Super League. So apart from the internal politics that you kind of mentioning as well, Benson. So again, moving into the next part, which is going into kind of highlight more about the role of data and technology. Again, there were a research by Two Circle saying that around 13.7 billion in 2019 has been identified as a lost revenue in sponsorship, primarily driven by the lack of data and digital. So how do you see the role of data and technology in achieving your fan engagement role? I know that you already touched on some of those examples, whether it's the short form of content or whether kind of the app that EHF are developing. But can you share some of the example and how we're using technology and data to achieve those goals?
I mean, for us, there's two broad areas, both of which actually we're working with Oracle on. So the first one, I suppose, to just paint a bit of a picture, fandom of F1 is slightly different to a lot of other sports in that, you know, if you're a football fan, you tend to be a Liverpool or an Arsenal or a Chelsea fan. 50% of F1 fans support more than the reason that they support one team over another is for you know, varying and complex reasons. It's either, you know, it's that they follow the current drivers, or they have an affinity with previous drivers or the team principal, or there is a brand affinity with Red Bull, etc. I think that complexity is really critical to understand why a fan follows you and why a fan engages with you. So the ability to understand that fan behavior, what they're looking for, in order for us to be able to personalize and tailor their fan experience is absolutely critical. So the data that we can get back and that we can understand on that fan behavior is really, really important for us. And then the other side, it's not around the data associated with fan behavior, but it is, you know, it's a huge part of what we do. F1 produces just the most vast swathes of data. And at the moment, we are looking to enhance our race station, which is part of our platform where it's the second screen. It's where fans go to in order to enhance their sort of race watching behavior. So it's the part of the site where you can understand tyre strategy and lap times and all of that kind of good data. And those streams are coming direct from the car, direct from the garage, and they're really enhancing in real time that sort of viewer behavior. I think in time for us, again, it's about the ability to tailor and personalize that. So we are the right fans for the right reasons, and just that kind of virtuous circle. But data is everything in an organization like this, not just from a fan perspective, but also just from what we generate.
Yes, and maybe even being able to translate some of that to local fans based on their location and language and so on and so forth. So kind of there is a limitless kind of possibilities of kind of bringing bringing the game closer to the fans.
Absolutely, yeah.
I would agree with a lot of points with Kelly. It almost describes our strategy as well. We're quite ambitious. We did surveys in the past, and we found that we had an estimated 150 million handball interested people, not necessarily hardcore fans, but interested in handball. And our objective is to try to reach those 150 million through our different strategies. And our president also, a couple of years ago, set us the goal doubling our commercial value by 2027. He just wants us to be a unicorn, so to be worth $1 billion in 7 years' time. So it sets us quite an ambitious target to reach. And basically through our CRM project with Oracle, our goal is to really understand our fans and the behavior of our fans much better, that we can start delivering personalized content, but we can also start and think about the sales funnel, trying to push them up the sales funnel to become much more engaged so that we can try and monetize them. And we've also taken ticketing in-house for our major EHF Euro events from 2022, for the men's 2022. So we obviously have an interest there to try and monetize, or I don't really like talking about monetize, but to bring more fans to our events basically and have full arenas, because our vision actually is to be the most attractive team sport in Europe. So it's not necessarily about money, it's about being attractive, having full arenas, being an attractive sport that people want to come to. And perhaps we're talking about fans here, but I could also mention that through our CRM project, we're also, because we're a federation, we're not only talking about fans and fan engagement, we're also talking about our stakeholders, and our remit is to get more people playing handball. And at the end of the day, where the fans come from, they come from people playing the sport and being passionate about the sport and becoming fans. So we really see data serving us across different areas, as well as fan areas, also to try and reach more players, have more coaches, and increase the quality of the sport in the long term.
Yeah, I think you got some competition in that space as well, JJ. I think we're all on a similar path here, aren't we? And yeah, I think it's fair to say, and maybe to add on to that, you know, the numbers are huge and vast, and when you look into them, but it's really about what I found interesting, and also using the CRM Eloqua, is comparing the data from, you know, what is out there, what we can understand from anonymous users, and what we can understand from known users, and how the interactions are actually sometimes a bit different, and then trying to then create this known fan, these personas, segments, if you will, to then try and again cater to the audience, right? And that's something that is interesting. And I think to the question about how is data helping us reach our goals, I mean, for us, a few years ago, digital transformation was the buzzword. It was everywhere in the market. I think, yeah, everyone was saying it. It meant something different to every single person, depending on the circumstance. And now I believe that the buzzword is data. Yeah. And so you combine these things together, and people are much more knowledgeable, much more aware as to what it takes to achieve this. And JJ alluded to it, you know, digital transformation, it is a marathon, it's not a sprint. But further to what Vincent mentioned, we need to be agile as well and have low-hanging fruit objectives that we can achieve. So I think it's trying to find this balance of what data can enable you to communicate internally. So if you're looking underneath the hood, if you will, look internally as to the operations and try to align internally with people who aren't necessarily familiar with these terminologies and what it means to achieve a goal. How it impacts on rights holders, on stakeholders, what is the output and such. It's not just about getting a piece of content to a second screen at all times. There's objectives behind that and strategies. So I think that's really where data is helping us communicate internally and to shed light on it. And further to JJ's point, what we're looking to try and achieve, at least from a digital perspective, is yes, increase revenues and such, but to create an omni-channel experience, to really try and have a state-of-the-art, if you will, digital ecosystem that enables users to come to a central destination for all things volleyball. You know, we have the opportunity here to really grab the sports, the content, and the limelight here, and present something amazing. So, you know, we're working towards that, and just making sure that everything is connected, and it's not as straightforward as it seems. And there's so many different products out there now that if you're using, you know, a hot topic is software as a service platforms, you know, and you're putting things together, I think you need to be aware of how you achieve these types of digital ecosystems, and again, using data to help you communicate that across the table. So there's one thing from a strategy perspective, there's another in terms of execution and how you marry these together. So I think for me, that's really where data is helping. It's internal comms as well as, you know, outward facing.
For us, I suppose the role of data is what's fourfold. If you, practically speaking, one, it's to better support an optimized media rights strategy, right? So allowing us to reach audiences in more places than ever before. while optimizing revenues, and that's obviously a challenge. So it's about the media, right? The media mix, effectively, right? Another one would be about better serving our commercial partners, right? Allowing them a more direct access to or better knowledge of our audiences for them to maximize commercial opportunities through the partnership. Data we use obviously also to grow revenues for ticketing, right? Filling venues, for merchandise sales. And the fourth would be, and certainly not the least, to recruit fans and to grow the game. So that's typically how we would use them on a regular basis. So it's about the media mix, it's about the commercial partner, it's about growing revenues through various means, ticketing and merchandising, and to grow the game and the participation in the game.
Yeah, I have one more point that maybe I could just bring that's interesting for us, because we're in an interesting situation because we have a long-term partnership with Infront and DAZN through to 2030. And obviously we're looking to the future as well, and we're looking to the potential in 10 years time, 7 years, 8, 9 years time. What will the TV market look like? And we're already thinking that with big players like Amazon, Facebook, et cetera, who are very dependent on data, that's when Amazon are already in the TV market, but when if they come in a big way to the TV market, then maybe in 10 years time that TV rights are sold on the basis also of data that's available and fan data. And our thinking is that it makes us in the future a very interesting proposition if we can say that, yes, we know our community, and yes, we know we have the data of most of the handball fans out there. It makes it an interesting proposition for a data-driven strategy, either for a partner or for ourselves in the future.
Yeah, I mean, JJ, you touched on one of the important points, which is bringing the ticketing data in-house. I remember in the time when I was in Spurs a few years back, it was, and even before that, it was all about outsourcing any kind of complex technology and data project to outsource it to another organization. Now it's kind of all of us kind of realize, as Nick mentioned, now is the key buzzword is the data. So it's all about bringing that ticketing in-house, so you are able to see the data and what's behind that kind of transaction. I mean, I'm just conscious of time. I know that some of our audience are raising hands. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to take a lot of questions over audio, but if you post your questions, we may be able to get back to you after the events with the answers. I'm just conscious of time, so we're moving into our last question, which is again probably what will be useful to many of the attendees. A lot of people are wondering how to start the journey, whether it's a journey of bringing that data in-house, or whether it's kind of the fan transformation journey. What's your advice as an expert, as sports leaders, of how people can start the transformation journey of the fan experience and where they should start from?
I think for me, it's just get back to basics. It's marketing 101. It's understand the value that you have in fans' lives. As Vincent mentioned earlier on, there is so much competition for time, for headspace, and that's just the online stuff, right? They've got offline lives too. So we need to be really clear around what is their motivation for engaging with you, and therefore what is that kind of key benefit that you can bring to them and their lives that sets you apart, not just from the other teams, but from other sorts of entertainment, from sort of everything else. What is the value that you offer, and then ensuring that benefit is felt in every single one of your touch points. So right the way through the funnel, that you are being very clear in the value that you give to their life. And I think that's the way that ultimately, if you can hand on heart say, this is the value that we bring, this is how we implement that is what unlocks growth. And the rest of the data, the commercialization, everything else, that will follow, because you've got that sort of core of what you stand for and why it is special, better or different than everything else out there. So I think for me, it is that marketing 101 piece that you absolutely have to start with.
Fantastic. Thank you, Kelly.
For us, the starting point was the new contracts with our new commercial partners, partly through necessity, because it says in our contract that we had to have a new website. So we developed a new website, and we also went through a brand process where we started thinking about our vision and who we are and where we want to go to. And from that came our vision that we want to grow our community and we want to be the most attractive sport, etc., etc. And from there, it's developed. But I think the crucial thing is, and we're a federation at the end of the day, and we organize competitions and we do transfers. And in the past, we've sold LED time or stickers on the floor, etc., etc. That it takes you have to think differently. You have to think in terms of marketing and digital marketing, fan journeys, the sales funnel. And for sports organizations, but for a sports federation, there's new expertise that you need to either learn or you need to bring into the organization, because you need to start to take fans on this journey from acquiring them through to engaging them to monetizing them. And that, for a lot of small federations, is a big challenge because it's this new way of thinking.
Yeah, I totally agree with everything that Kelly and JJ have said. I think maybe a different angle that I would highlight as well would be around the infrastructure. I know it's maybe a bit techie. I don't want to go into it in too much detail, but for me, it's something that I was kind of protecting in a previous role, and something that I'm really trying to ensure that is persistent and maintains its integrity, because it's all well and good having these aspirations and these incredible products and content and owning everything possible, but if you don't know how to actually get it to market, to the consumer, then that's another story. So I think it's not a case of chicken and the egg. I do believe that you need to have the objective. You need to know what the marketing process is, what your value is, etc. But when it comes to implementing it, it's to understand what can you do, what knowledge do you have in house, what do you need to source, then evaluating the cost and the cost benefit of this. But yeah, I think that really is something that does go awry at times. So I'd suggest that, be aware of what it takes to get there. If it's a website, you can build websites very easily now. You can also make them very extensive. So figure out what your customers actually need from you and where you can place your product appropriately across that journey throughout the marketing funnel, if you will.
For us, the journey will start for real, and will really take off once we have, I suppose, a business model that is fit for purpose. Once we have a proper partnership in place that will bring the expertise or the level of investment that we don't have at present, right? So it's really a question of getting the business model fit for purpose, and unlocking those investments that we haven't been able to make yet. The rest, once we're at a stage where all we have to do is to prioritize where we invest, then the hardest part is behind us already, right? So first is about the business and how do we find the right partners to do that with.
And I'm just conscious that we actually 3 minutes over time, and I do feel like we are only getting into the introduction, and I'm start to get warming up in terms of asking more questions. But unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our panel discussion. And I'm sure that all of you feel, and probably hopefully the listeners as well to us and the people joining us today feel like we are only scratching the surface of a big topic. We talked about a fan-centric approach, as if I can call it, is kind of thinking about the fans, the different forms of content, the role of 5G, second screen, third screen, and equally as well the partners and the commercial partner, as Vincent mentioned, and the big goals for EHF was having 150 million fans and creating a $1 billion business in the 7 years time. I would like to thank you all who are been listening to us and watching us and listening to this kind of conversation. I hope you all enjoyed this discussion as I did. I found it really useful and engaging and hopefully insightful. Also, I'd like to thank our great panel. Thank you very much, Kelly, Vincent, Nick, JJ. And lastly, but not least, I would like to thank our organization, Oracle and CREA, for helping us to be with you today. Thank you again, everyone, and I wish you all the best. Stay healthy and stay safe.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers,
Thank
everybody.
you. Bye-bye.
All the
Take
best.
care. Thank you.